Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. See a lot of you are joining, and so welcome to today's October call. Can you believe it's October already? So happy fall. Yes, it is officially fall. So we're going to start off as usual with our community welcome, and today we're going to be talking about Microsoft Teams and a lot of the announcements that came down during Ignite. We have our own David Branscombe here, and he's a partner technical architect. We are colleagues on the same team, and we're fortunate to have him today. Looking forward to hearing his presentation, and then I imagine there's going to be a lot of questions, and so we're going to leave some time for Q&A, and we have some other folks from our Modern Workplace team. We've got Joanna and Rob here also in the background. They're going to be moderating and picking off questions and getting those answered during the call. And if you don't see it answered right away, we will get that answered a little bit later in the call. So if you don't see your question come up, just hang tight. So let's go ahead and put our community welcome slides up there just so you know how to stay in touch. And if you've made it to this call, then you know how to join those calls. But if you're new or this got forwarded to you, you see some vanity URLs for the monthly calls. And then we also have a Yammer group where you can get the slides to this presentation and see other posts and news. We have well over 2,000 partners out there. There's a lot of partner-to-partner interaction. And so if you haven't joined that yet, I encourage you to do that. It's aka.ms/join 0365 Yammer. And if you're brand new to it, you'll just need to wait a minute so you can be verified. And once that's accepted, that will take you right to our Office 365 Modern Workplace Partner Group. We also have a couple of blog properties, and you can see those URLs as well. There's the US Office 365 blog, and there's also a community blog as well. So we regularly post to those two different properties, and so I encourage you to check those out for partner news and also any events that are coming up and information like this to hear about the upcoming calls and so on. And we have a couple of events to talk about. And again, you can get these slides, but just take note of those URLs there if you want to write them down or take them, but you can always get this deck in the file section of the Yammer group, and I'll post an announcement that references that if you have trouble finding it later. But this is a text series, and I haven't attended one of these yet, but it looks like it's pretty good content. I don't have time to go in and talk exactly about what it all is, but it is level 300 training, and these are 2-day sessions for both enterprise deployment and management, and then there's also security and compliance. So those are different sessions that you can register. These are the US dates that we have right now. Just a heads up that I believe that enterprise session in Las Colinas is currently filled. But I took a look at the other ones, and they seem to be open at this time. So I encourage you to take a look at that and see if that agenda and place works for you, and check those out. Next is the Microsoft Teams workshop. So this is very appropriate for our discussion today. So if you want to spend some time at one of our MTCs, this is going to be a day-long workshop training. And I think what's interesting here, if you notice the target audience, it's catering to IT pros and developers. There's going to be like an admin section that shows you how to roll that out and put any controls in place. And there's also going to be a segment for developers, so you can see how to extend Teams. So encourage you to check one of those out at your local MTC. And then finally, a number of you have been asking on our Yammer group, and I've heard from other partners that are also looking to, Dave, could you just forward the next slide, please? Looking to pass the certification exams. So for us here in productivity, if you're working on your silver or gold cloud productivity competency, you know that you need to pass that 346 and 347 exams. So we're doing something a little bit different in this fiscal year, where we're having something that we're calling an exam camp. So what this is, it's a 4 week long period where it's all virtual and you go through weekly video and then lab content. And there's also going to be a support network around that. And so you'll get support from your peers. I know that I'll be on there and other folks to be able to kind of support you through that. And then it ends with everybody schedules their exam on the same day. And then it starts off with the exam cram at the start, and then everybody takes an online proctored exam. So it was pretty successful in some of the other countries, so we're going to bring it here to the United States. If you've taken a look at those training courses for the exams, you know they're very expensive, so this is a very good value at $299, so we're subsidizing that, and so I encourage you to take advantage of that. I believe there will be other dates. I don't have them yet, but the session begins on November 13th. And when we get that registration link, we'll certainly post that on our Yammer group. Okay, so I think that does it for our announcements. I'm going to turn this over to Dave. Dave, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been a pretty exciting last couple of weeks with Ignite and all the announcements, right?
Yeah, it definitely has. There's a lot of excitement among customers and partners about Skype for Business, Microsoft Teams. There's also a lot of questions, and that's what we're trying to do with this session is try to answer some of those questions for our partners, help them understand what Microsoft's vision is, and help them make good decisions regarding their business about how to position Microsoft Teams and what they can tell their customers going forward.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to this session, but also I think if I could add, just really to build some excitement. I know that you and I and the rest of our team, we've been living on Teams for quite some time now, and we've been desktop sharing, we've been chatting, we've been having video calls, we've been having our team meetings on there, and I can say personally, it's been a great experience. It's fast. It has some great audio quality, and I feel like when I go back to a Skype meeting, I feel like I'm taking a little bit step backwards. So I know I'm really enjoying the experience.
Yeah, it definitely is a different experience, and the quality is noticeably better than with even the best Skype meetings. So I think a lot of customers are going to be really happy with it.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll turn it over to you, and thanks again for your investment in our partners today.
All right, so again, my name is Dave Branscombe, and I'm Partner Technical Architect. We're going to talk about the Ignite announcements. And first thing I'll show you here is this important URLs. So when Michael puts the deck up on the Yammer site, you'll have access to these URLs. These are the ones that I reference throughout this deck, and they're the ones that will give you the most information about the future for Skype for Business, both on Prem and online, as well as Teams and the different elements that come into play there. How do you manage video interoperability? How do Skype and Teams work together? Things like that. So we're going to take a look at those as we go through this deck. But definitely you might want to keep this one slide handy as a reference. So the first question is, what was actually announced at Ignite? Because there's a lot of uncertainty, and some people were not really clear about what the announcements actually entailed. So during the keynote session, the Introducing a New Vision for Intelligent Communications, the statement was made that Microsoft Teams will evolve as the primary client for intelligent communications in Office 365, and that over time, it will replace the current Skype for Business client. So there had been some concern that was going to happen overnight. That is not the case. This is going to be a phased approach, and so we want to give our customers and our partners time to prepare for Teams and to do a smooth transition over to that. Microsoft Teams, some of the features that are going to be coming over the next few months. So Teams and Skype for Business are not right now at feature parity. There are some areas where Teams is working to catch up to the features that exist in Skype. So over the next few months, what we're going to see include things like inbound, outbound calls to PSTN numbers, hold call, transfer, voicemail. Most of those things work already right now, but some of the improvements that we'll see include things in the last bullet point, right? So interoperability between Teams and Skype for Business, making sure that your presence in Skype for Business matches the presence that you show in Teams. Call interoperability, making sure that people can call between clients and have a good experience. So things like that are still in the works, and the developers are working really hard to make sure everything's very smooth, and that the features that you have in Skype are going to be carried over to Teams. There were also some name changes. So for those of you that are working in the Skype for Business Online area, you've probably been using phrases like Cloud PBX, PSTN calling, PSTN conferencing, PSTN consumption billing. Those have been modified to phone system, calling plan, audio conferencing, and communications credit. Many of our partners were working on the Skype operations framework and using that as the methodology that they use for deploying Skype, whether in a hybrid scenario or purely online. That naming convention has been changed to the Practical Guidance for Cloud Voice. And then along with that, along with the Skype operations framework, was what we called the soft assessment, which was a validation of the skills that a person has to deliver a session or a project using the Skype operations framework. So the soft assessment has been renamed to advanced skills assessment. So the big questions come up with, what does this mean for the future? What does this mean for Skype for Business Server on-prem first? So the simplest way that we can put this is Skype for Business Server 2015 is still fully supported. If you look at the URL that's noted there, that's the lifecycle page for Microsoft products. And we see that the mainstream support date for Skype for Business Server on-prem extends to 2020. And then it'll be an extended support to 2025. So we've got roughly 8 more years of Skype for Business Server 2015 support, if you count in the extended support date. So Skype for Business Server is not going away, and this is Skype for Business Server 2015. Now, at the same time, we announced that there would be another version of Skype for Business Server on-prem. So they're calling it vNext. They're targeting a release date of calendar year 2018 for this version of Skype for Business Server on-prem. So if you figure 10 years of support beyond that, you're looking at 2028 for support for that version of Skype for Business Server. So Skype for Business Server on-prem is not going away. We know that there are customers that want to host it on-prem, and while we would love to see you move to the cloud and feel that there's a lot more value in the cloud, we are going to fully support you for at least the current version and the upcoming version for years to come. What you're going to see over time, however, are things like a refresh to the Skype for Business client. You're going to start seeing improvements to the interoperability between Skype for Business and Teams. So one thing to keep in mind is that there is no such thing as Teams on premises. Teams is a purely Office 365 service, and it will never be coming to on-prem. So what that means for Skype for Business Server on-prem users is that there has to be some way of creating interoperability between those two environments. If a customer wants to move from on-prem to the cloud and into Teams, you have to have some way of doing that in a phased manner, and that means you have to have interoperability between the two environments. So that interop between Teams and Skype for Business on-prem is going to be critical to that. There's going to be continuing improvements to security and performance from the learnings that we have in the cloud. We'll bring those to the on-premises version of Skype for Business as well. And there'll be improvements to metrics and analytics and stuff like that. So you'll be able to monitor and maintain your Skype for Business Server on-prem environment in a healthy state. When will hybrid customers be able to move to Teams? So one of the points that's made in the FAQ that's listed at the bottom of the page is that we are planning to simplify how customers can connect trunks or third-party telephony systems to Office 365, and that is targeted for the second half of calendar year 2018. And we don't have any additional information that we can share about that specifically right now, but keep track of the roadmap, keep track of announcements to come out, and that vision will become clearer. As it notes here on the slide, the data is subject to change, so just follow the roadmap closely, and you'll have a better idea of how to position these types of services for your customers. Customers that are currently using hybrid voice or that have needs for hybrid voice today, you can continue to use Skype for Business Online. So if you have, for example, a CCE environment, or you've got on-prem connectivity through an on-premise PBX and Skype for Business, and you need to maintain that hybrid connectivity, you can stay on Skype for Business Online. And then as those features become available in Teams, then you can transition over. All right, so what does this mean for Skype for Business Online? So this is where people started to get a little worried. Many of them saw there were blog posts and so forth from third parties that noted a page that popped up in their Skype for Business portal in Office 365 that said Skype is now Teams, and so that kind of led many people to think, oh, what's happening here. So the statement from the partner FAQ that's listed there is, we plan to continue to support Skype for Business Service and Client. We have no plan to remove Skype for Business from Office 365 subscriptions at this time. So there's no reason to panic. Skype for Business Online is going to continue to be supported for a period of time. Obviously, the long-term goal is to move to Teams, but that's not going to happen, tomorrow. You'll have notifications and the ability to plan and move your customers appropriately. What does it mean for licensing, though? So if you've already sold licensing to a customer, and the licensing was based on Skype for Business Online, maybe you also sold additional add-on licensing for Cloud PBX or PSTN calling or PSTN consumption billing, things like that. What does that mean for licensing if they move to Teams? Microsoft Teams is available in the Office 365 suites, and the capabilities that are considered the premium workloads in Skype for Business in Office 365 today continue to be premium workloads in Microsoft Teams. So any licensing investments that a customer has made in the Skype for Business world, you might say, will carry forward to Microsoft Teams. And that does include any standalone or I should say standalone add-on capabilities like PSTN calling and PSTN consumption billing. That will carry forward into Teams. Upgrades. So once again, to reiterate the answer to the question, is Microsoft planning scheduled upgrades? The statement again from that FAQ is, currently we have no plans to schedule upgrades for enterprise customers. If you watch the Ignite keynote video and some of the other videos, there were demonstrations of what the portal for Skype for Business Online will look like in the near future. And essentially what you'd be looking at is a single portal that contains information about Skype for Business users as well as Teams users. So you'd manage them both from the same portal. You'd be able to very methodically and carefully manage the migrations of users or transition of users from Skype for Business over to Teams from within the same portal. So you won't be getting tons of different tool sets to manage and different places to look. It'll all be available in a single portal view. Just a little bit more detail as far as Cloud PBX customers. So if your customer has purchased and is leveraging Cloud PBX, there's a couple FAQs that you want to take a look at, and these are kind of the same FAQs that you've already seen throughout the deck, but you might want to take a look at them and read them over carefully. The Cloud PBX and voice capabilities that exist in Skype for Business are going to be obviously transitioned to Teams so that they're at feature parity. There are also some roadmap features and functions and capabilities that will be added to Teams. So that's going to happen over time. And again, watching the Teams roadmap is the best way to get the correct information about that and to appropriately plan how to address your customer needs for rollouts and for planning and things of that nature. So the question becomes for customers that are kind of already in flight. My customer's already in the process of planning or deploying Skype for Business online. What do I do, right? So the guidance that we're offering is that customers should look at the Teams capabilities, look at the roadmap, and figure out if the capabilities that exist or that will very shortly exist, if those will meet the customer's business needs and their timing requirements. If those capabilities do match up with what the customer needs, then go ahead and adjust the strategy to deploy Teams. All the work that you've done in terms of planning for rolling out clients, for making sure that the network is prepared, those will follow into the Teams deployment. It's not wasted effort. You may have to take into account some additional training capabilities so that people understand how to create teams, how they manage documents and so forth from within the Teams interface. It is there's more capabilities in Teams than there are in Skype for Business. So there's a little bit of additional training that you may be able to offer to your customers. On the other hand, if the features and capabilities of Teams do not match up with what your customers need right now, then go ahead and move forward with Skype for Business, right? We can support Skype for Business as well as Teams on the same desktop. That's the way I'm running right now. I'm running this meeting from within Skype, and I also have Teams open, so there's no issue with doing that. And it'll also get the end users familiar with the Teams interface. They can start using maybe some of the document sharing and collaboration tools. And then as the telephony features become more mature and match up with what the organization needs, then you can move that capability over for the users as well. So it's a phased transition. You can do it, with a lot of good planning and make sure that there's no adverse impact to your end users. So what's the coexistence story between Skype for Business and Teams? So Teams is enabled by default on all eligible tenants. So you need to decide how you want to manage Teams side by side with Skype for Business and continue to meet your users' expectations. So there are two ways that you can manage the side-by-side customer journey. And we might also say that there's a third option here of simply not enabling Teams at this point. But if you want to make both available for your end users, there's the unmanaged version of the customer journey. So in that case, IT isn't actively controlling the experience. Users have the ability to download the client and start working on it and getting to know it kind of organically. And then the other option is having a managed side-by-side customer journey, in which case IT controls the experience. They roll it out in a very prescriptive approach to their end users. They make sure that there's training. They show the users best practices for how to use things and stuff like that, and then go through the training process for the calling experience and conferencing and so forth. So there's two different ways to approach it, and there were actually interviews at Ignite. If you want to take a look at the Ignite videos, they're up on YouTube. But there was a examples of two different companies that followed these two different approaches. And they both were successful. It just depends on what your organization is like, how they manage change control, the culture of the organization, and just understanding how receptive your users are to new technologies. So you can take either approach. Some things to consider as far as what organizations might be good for the side-by-side, unmanaged versus managed. These are just some findings that we've seen. It doesn't mean that this is the way it has to be done for organizations that are, for example, small. They don't have to use the unmanaged. You can still do it managed, and there's certainly scenarios where that would be appropriate. But these are kind of how you could, in general, characterize the types of organizations that would benefit most from a particular deployment methodology. What does it mean for video interop? So I know that many of the partners that I've worked with over the last year or so, and many other partners have significant video capabilities, and many of their customers have Cisco and Tandberg and LifeSize and whatever kind of other video interoperability or video devices, video teleconferencing devices, and they want to understand, we had certain capabilities in Skype for Business. Are those going to transition over to Teams? And so the answer that's given here, again, in the partner FAQ, is that there was an announcement at Ignite that we're working with Polycom, BlueJeans, and Pexip to deliver cloud video interoperability with Microsoft Teams. Users or organizations that are currently on Skype for Business Online can continue to leverage Polycom RealConnect for Office 365. And as the products become available from those three vendors and any others that may follow, those will be made available and announced through the roadmap. What about the Skype Room systems themselves? So Skype Room systems are going to continue to progress. When the Teams capabilities come to the Skype Room systems, we'll support single click to join for Teams meetings. There are some feature gaps currently for that right now, things like dual screen support and panoramic video devices, but these are software fixes, right? So those will be coming in later releases, and the capabilities will be there. Lenovo also announced that they'll be bringing to market a new Skype Room system, the Smart Hub 500, and there will also be other room systems from Logitech, Crestron, and Polycom. So stay on the lookout for those updates to the Skype Room systems families. What does this mean from a fast track perspective? So as mentioned, we changed the wording of Skype Operations Framework to the practical guidance for cloud voice. So what are some of the tools that have been made available to help partners and customers to move to Office 365 and Teams? So the big one is My Advisor, and My Advisor has a lot of the same capabilities that you probably saw in the Skype Operations Framework. There was an automated tool, well, not an automated tool, but an online tool that you could use to kind of predict what steps you'd need to take in order to properly deploy Skype for Business Online. You can access My Advisor at the URL that's listed there, aka.ms/myadvisor, and I'll be demoing that in just a minute, so we'll be able to take a look at what that actually looks like. In fact, we'll be doing that right now, actually. So let me share my desktop, and let me first get that page up and running. And okay, so this is what the My Advisor page looks like. And if you go to the guidance, this is where you can get information about specific types of project planning that you may need help with. But if I go here and sign into my advisor, what I've done here is I've already pre-staged the environment that I'm going to show you here. And I hope it takes me to the same one. Okay, yeah, so the network planner, this is where you're going to define your organization, your sites, the personas of the users, and then there's a calculator and recommendations. So like I said, I've already kind of set this up so that we can save time with me typing. So if we start with the organization, you define who your organization is, you just give it a name, right? Then you go to the point where you create sites. And in the sites, what I've done here is I created a number of different sites in, for example, Miami, United Kingdom, China, Boise, Fairfax, Fort Worth, a bunch of different places. It allows me to modify user counts, define building names, the locations, and so forth. If I show you what one of these looks like, it asks me for things like zip code, what type of building is it? Is it, you can define this however you want, right? This is just how I chose to define, the building type and building office type. But it also asks you for network information. So here's where you're going to define the site subnet, the network range, how many users, what the connectivity is to the WAN, how much bandwidth they have for internet, this is a PSTN egress point, and so forth. So you define this for all your sites, and I've done that for, what do we have, 6 sites here. What's neat is you can also upload this from a CSV file. If you have a CSV file that contains all this information, you can just upload it and it will populate this tool. But once I've populated all this, then I can go to a geographic view and it'll show me where all these sites are, right? So I can click in here and it shows me the total WAN impact and the total Office 365 connectivity impact for the Boise office or for the Fairfax office, the Fort Worth office. And here I got some red stuff, so that's telling me that I got a problem. I can expect bandwidth issues there. So kind of a nice visual so that you can, at a glance, take a look at your sites. All right, so going back here, if we go over to the personas, then this is where you define, for those of you that have worked with this Skype for Business bandwidth calculator, you know what personas are, right? They're a way of characterizing the usage for groups of your end users. So for information workers or kiosk users or office users, you define the percentage of remote users, what their kind of weighting is in terms of audio usage, video usage, desktop sharing, and so forth, all these different tools that they could be using or features that they could be using within Skype or Teams. How do those users typically make use of the tools? Then we go to the calculator, and here is where we define how these personas are distributed, right? So we have each of the site names. We've defined how many users are there. So how many of those users fit into each of those personas, right? So for the Miami office, I've said there's 10 information workers, 2 kiosk users, 15 office users, and 3 executives. So that's going to change the bandwidth requirements for that office because of the way that we're defining these personas, right? Some may be very heavily using conferencing or voice, others maybe not so much. So this is where you start to create the variations in your bandwidth requirements. And if we take a look at the outcome, here's where we see what the expected usage is for the WAN connectivity, as well as connectivity to Office 365, what the requirements will be overall, as well as on an individual workload basis. Okay? So this shows you the impact for Skype for Business, and then there's a corresponding table for Microsoft Teams. So you'll notice that there are differences in the impact for different workloads, right? So for example, video, it's a little bit heavier in Teams than it is in Skype for Business, but desktop sharing is a little bit lighter in Teams than Skype for Business. So it's just a way of kind of estimating what the bandwidth requirements will be. Now, if we go to the report, here's where we get kind of a high-level view of where there are going to be issues. So we look pretty good in most of the places, but United Kingdom and Fort Worth are going to have some issues with connectivity to Office 365, so we'll need to take that into account as we plan our network connectivity. Then we go over to the recommendations, and this is one of the cool features, right? So here we've got the recommendations as far as individual sites, what the overall WAN impact is, the Office 365 impact, RTC connectivity, and so forth. But what's really cool is you can take this slider, and if you watch the impact numbers, it's going to change as we move users from Skype for Business over to Teams, right? So you can kind of estimate how quickly you're going to need to make those bandwidth changes, those networking changes. So that's going to really, really help you with your planning so that you know how much time you have and what the impact's going to be on a per site basis, right? So this is a really, really interesting planning tool that you can take advantage of. So that's the network planner. We've also got on this side the Academy. So those of you that went through the soft assessment, oops, get rid of that. All this stuff is probably very familiar to you. It's all training information that you can use and then take the soft assessment. So it's all the same stuff, just a little bit different interface. Now, if we go over to one of the features that a lot of customers have been asking for in Skype in Teams is the external guest access. Okay, so what I'm looking at here is my test tenant, which is com8633970.onmicrosoft.com. I've got a user named Karen Berg. And what we want for Karen is to be able to connect to the team site that we use internally in our group for connecting to partner technical architects. So the way this works, very simply, now obviously on the back end, what we've done is enabled Teams and enabled guest access for Teams, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. But what we can do is simply add members. And I go in here and say Karen B. It's already cached her information. But that's the Karen B that I'm interested in adding. Okay. So she's been added now as a guest. And if I went into my Azure Active Directory, I would be able to see that she has been added as a guest to our Azure AD tenant. But now if I go back to Karen's team site. So this is the team site that Karen uses, right? So Karen uses this Teams within her organization, within the Contoso organization. This is the web experience, by the way. This is not the full client, but it's very similar to the full client. So this is her own tenant. But what I can do here is if I click on here, I have the option to switch over and view the Microsoft guest area where she's been enabled as a guest. And hopefully this will work quickly, even though I just now did it. Now what it's going to do, so there you go. So she has access now to the Partner Technical Architect area, and she can get into the files and so forth. So just that easy. She has access to the Teams. And there's a blog article that talks about which features and capabilities she has available from within this interface. But then she can flip back over to her Contoso team site, and then she's kind of back home, right? Now, one of the things I said was that I would show you how to enable the Teams guest access. And it's very simple. If you go into the Office 365 Admin Center for your Office 365 tenant, go to Settings, Services, and Add-ins, and you drop down here to Microsoft Teams. You click on it. Then you go to this section, Settings by User and License Type. You click on the little drop down that says Guest, And this has already been turned on, but it's just this slider, right? You just flip that slider over and click save. And just like that, you've enabled guest access to Teams for your organization. So very simple to use, very simple to enable, and that's kind of that. So going back to our content. All right, so that was the demo. Now the question is for many partners, where do we go from here? Right, we've got some information. How do we start, moving forward with our customers? So the best thing we can advise is continue to be that trusted advisor to your customers. Let them know what the plans are, what the timelines are that they're looking at, what the options are that they have, the things we've talked about. Make yourself familiar with all the articles in the URLs that I put into this deck. Make sure that you're able to talk authoritatively and confidently about those things. If you've got customers that have already made the move to Skype for Business, start having the discussions with them about Microsoft Teams, because there are lots of capabilities within Microsoft Teams that expand on what they have in Skype for Business, and it can be a really useful tool for many organizations. Teams is going to help you drive and expand your revenue streams. So if you aren't familiar with Teams, the basic idea behind Teams is that it gives you a portal into an Office 365 tenant. So you have access to the backend SharePoint, to OneDrive, to Office 365 groups, to the Skype for Business, or the voice and conferencing capabilities. You've got access to Azure Active Directory. There's an Exchange mailbox and calendaring behind there. So there's tons of usage and adoption areas that you can build upon. If you've already got Skype for Business offers in market, maybe build new offers that relate specifically to Teams, or modify your current Skype for Business offers to reflect Teams. There's, again, lots of opportunities to expand your adoption skill set and offerings, your change management, providing network support for voice, video, and meetings. There's plenty of opportunities within Teams. And what we're seeing is a lot of very excited growth from end users and organizations. Not nearly the worry that I think some of us had about the change from Skype to Teams. So be excited about it, and be confident in sharing it with your customers. Again, just some links that you can click on when you get the deck. Most of these are already in that one important URLs section. And then stay tuned for a Microsoft Teams roadmap coming here in October. So sometime in the next several weeks, we're expecting to get a Teams roadmap with more detailed specifications about what features are going to be available and when. So that's all I had for now. Does anybody have any questions, or Robert or Joanna, any questions that everybody would benefit from hearing over the call? Or
Thanks, Dave. Great content. Joanna and Rob have been doing a great job knocking down all the questions, and so they've done a good job of answering those on the call. Just a couple of outstanding. Oh, looks like somebody just picked that one off. One just came in, and the call is being recorded, and as always, you can come about like an hour after the scheduled time, and then you will see a recording up there, so you can just kind of view that on demand with the same registration link. And so know that's available, and we also posted to we have a YouTube playlist of all the calls for every month, and so they get uploaded to there as well, which I think you can find that link on the Yammer group, but know that you can always go view it on demand. So let's see, other questions coming in. The copy of the slide deck, You can find that on our Yammer group. You can find that in the message history. It's currently up there now in our Yammer group, so that's aka.ms/join 0365 Yammer. And it's in the files section. I'm going to go ahead and post a direct link after that, but you can find it there right away. And so, the Dean is asking about, does the Teams guest respect external sharing settings implemented for SharePoint Online? And so, yes, it does. And so today you're going to need to enable that separately. We tested this out, and so it does respect that. So today it's a separate action to go and enable that. Let's see, what else do we have? So I'm going to go ahead and post a couple of poll questions so you can give us some feedback on today's call. We have one question that just came in. Let's see. Will, and if yes, when will get local dial-in numbers available for all countries in Europe? When will the dial-out PSTN be available? Can anybody on the call answer that live?
So can you read the question one more time? I kind of got part of it, but I didn't hear the whole thing.
Sure. It says, will, and if yes, when will get local dial-in numbers available for all countries in Europe? And then the second part of that is, when will the dial-out PSTN be available? Do we have any information on that yet?
I don't have anything real specific. Robert, do you have any information?
I don't at this time. I think a lot of this is going to be cleared up, hopefully, once we get the latest roadmap decks.
Yeah, that's what I would expect too. That the country-specific information regarding telephony capabilities is going to be kind of an ongoing story. It's not going to happen all at once.
All right, well, that seems to be all the questions we have. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and end the call, but we will, just a few minutes early, but what we'll do is that we will stay on the line here. So if you want to continue to ask questions, we will knock those down in the, just go ahead and type those in your messages window. But I'm going to end the recorded portion of our call. And Dave, thank you so much for terrific information, very timely. I know it was really helpful to our partners. I'm seeing some positive comments come in. And Rob and Joanna, thank you so much for helping out with the moderation and getting those questions answered. So thank you all very much, and I appreciate you joining and your time today. And enjoy the rest of your day, and look forward to a good weekend.